Hey all, so back with another Spotlight with Context, and today we are talking about Franken-Castle, which is Frank Castle, the Punisher, dead and resurrected as Frankenstein's monster, because nothing is off limits in comics, especially things that are public domain, and happy Halloween, y'all. This is a funny month. So getting right into the attributes with a survivability of 4, Frank is another skill champion that can put a debuff on himself and then heal from it via willpower. Um, he also has some interesting adrenaline interactions that allow him to stay stronger. You have to do specific things to really capitalize on them, but they can really help top you up. So this is a pretty sustainable champion. Damage of 4, again, you have to do a couple things to really maximize this. But if you do, then Special 2, Special 1 is going to pack quite a bit of damage for this character. Ease of use 2.5. I've already said a couple times there are some hoops to jump through here. Frank has a very unconventional play style. There's not really anyone else that works the way he does in MCOC. I don't think it's that hard to master, but it is just different. And so that novelty by itself carries a fair amount of weight, hence the lower ease of use score here. Utility of 3.5, a lot of this is just how strong Frank's crush is. It can break through all kinds of blocks, but there are a few other things in there as well. And then defender strength of 2. He's kind of just weird to fight. He's not all that dangerous, all told, but they're just things that will get in your way. So a little bit above the absolute basement. Getting into the abilities, we're starting off with Dr. Morbin-stein's monster here. He was resurrected by Morbius. The reanimation process grants immunity to poison, petrify, and specter effects. Additionally, Frank's regen rate is set to 65% and cannot be reduced any further. So that does mean that it can be increased via the recovery mastery to 80%. But if you're facing somebody with despair and they put debuffs on you, there's a decent chance that they're going to lower it right back down to 65 via despair, and it just won't go further than that. Being too angry to die grants Frank 1 rank of the willpower mastery, but if you have more, then he will benefit from those. And this grants him the mastery, but it doesn't make the mastery different. I've seen this question a few times already. If something disables the willpower mastery, it will disable Frank's as well. When Frank is struck by a basic attack while unstoppable, or when he is shocked, he gains a non-stacking rage debuff for 20 seconds. Here's that self-debuff we were talking about. While that rage is active, his basic attacks passively convert a flat 10% more adrenaline to health. What this means is that if a medium attack is normally converting, 1% of base attack from adrenaline to health every time it lands, then Frank is going to turn that into 11% of base attack. That is not the actual number, but I'm sticking to easy ones because that is how adrenaline works. It's not something we talk about a lot, and I want to get the concept across, right? So this means that he's actually benefiting lights relatively more than mediums or heavies, because mediums, heavies, specials already convert more adrenaline, and so they will still benefit, well, the mediums and the heavies, but the lights are going to be even better. So if you just do a basic 5-hit combo while you have a rage up, you're going to convert your adrenaline very efficiently, as opposed to other characters that normally have to throw specials to really convert a lot of adrenaline back. When Frank is inflicted with or immune to a non-damaging debuff other than rage, his combo meter gains 2 hits. So this rage won't give you extra combo, but any other non-damaging debuff, including the several that he is immune to, are going to tick up his combo. Which is helpful because whenever his combo crosses a multiple of 15, he gains a Berserk passive for 20 seconds, which is then paused during his special attacks and stacks up to 6. Berserk is an effect that we've only seen before on a relic, and it increases attack rating, but only while unstoppable. So it's kind of like a targeted fury, right? So if you're not unstoppable, it doesn't do anything. The passive will just sit there on the HUD and cool, it's a counter, right? But while you're unstoppable, this can give you a lot of attack rating when you're at that max stacks. So let's move right on to Unstoppable Machine and talk about Frank's Unstoppable. Frank does not idle after dodging back. If you haven't noticed this yet, in our game, most of the time when a character dodges back, they idle. They have like a basic kind of passing time animation that plays for a certain amount of time, and then if the opponent is not immediately in front of them, they will start auto running or walking forward, right? That's what we call that. Frank does not idle. When he dodges back, as soon as he's done with the dodge animation, he will start walking forward. Now, the exception to this is that he can idle if the opponent is already within striking distance, but most of the time that's not really going to be a thing, because if the opponent's within striking distance, they're probably going to try to strike you. But worth calling out, because it's not that he can't idle, it's just that by default he doesn't idle after dodging back, because he starts to run forward instead. This is not a dash, but it is that, like we said, auto run. While he's doing this, he gains an unstoppable passive for 0.7 seconds. This will not re-trigger while it's already active, and it is paused while running, charging heavy attacks, or attacking. And so what that means is that basically you get this unstoppable, and it's supposed to carry into the next time you take an action, right? Because it's paused while you're running forward, it's paused while you're charging the heavy attack, it's paused while you're attacking, but as soon as you actually commit to attacking, as soon as you stop attacking, it unpauses and is going to go away, right? Now, this unstoppable turns on your berserk passives and gives you extra attack rating, but this is also what allows you to get that rage. So you're probably gonna want to look for safe spots to take a single hit while unstoppable and really turn that rage on. This is even better because of this next bullet. Frank's unstoppable grants him an additional 30% combat adrenaline, meaning that instead of the 30% that a 6 or a 7 star normally stores of incoming hit damage as adrenaline, Frank will store 60% of incoming damage as adrenaline. If you're dealing with a lower rarity of Frank, then this will just go from 0 to 30, and it basically gives him the adrenaline that you're used to on a higher rarity. This can also be boosted further by the stat focus, and you can get this all the way up to 65 and store 2/3 of hit damage as adrenaline. But just while unstoppable, right? And that's the other reason that while he has that rage up from getting hit, he converts adrenaline more efficiently because he needs to, because he's gaining more from being hit in the first place. The unstoppable also prevents incoming basic attacks from resetting his combo meter, so that's not a combo shield, but it's effectively a combo shield. And honestly, the reason it's not a combo shield is because there's enough going on Frank's HUD, and we didn't need to add a stimulate and a combo shield to it. As an attacker, this also grants stun immunity, which is very helpful because if you've ever used somebody like Viv, or just any other character with an unconventional opening for their heavy, and you go to throw that heavy, and the opponent triggers stand your ground and parries you, that's one of the most rage-inducing things that can happen. So, while Frank doesn't disable stand your ground, and you should be a little careful, he won't be parried by it, right? Additionally, if you're using that unstoppable to get a normal combo off, the opponent might try to parry you, but you won't get stunned. Also, as an attacker, Frank gains his unstoppable when he's struck by a basic attack immediately after dodging back, which means that if you're caught on a dash back before you have time to finish the animation and then start running forward, you still get credit for what you were trying to do, right? He also gains it plus the ability to run immediately after blocking the final hit of the opponent's special attack. So you can block that last hit and start moving forward towards them where normally you wouldn't be able to. This is a lot of weird little modifications to the default way that our animations are strung together, honestly. And that's probably kind of hard to imagine and process without getting in and playing the character. But to kind of shortcut it for you, the reason that all of these extra rules are in here is because, like I said, Frank has a completely novel playstyle. And these were kind of the things we had to do to make it work. And because we tell you when we do things like that, they're here. But I really kind of want to focus on that first bullet of this section is the most important. Try to understand what that means and what you're going to try to do with it. This third bullet is kind of just, hey, it works when you want it to, even when the rules don't perfectly line up most of the time. So if this third bullet feels weird, don't worry about it. You don't have to process it, most likely. Next up, this unstoppable is immediately removed at the end of his heavy or his special attacks, or when the opponent activates a special attack. So be careful trying to do this whole unstoppable machine thing while the opponent has a bar of power. Now, another effect of his unstoppable that needs its own header here, when he hits the opponent, or as an attacker when he hits their block, Frank's second basic attack inflicts an indefinite crush passive that then is also removed when his unstoppable expires. Now, that second basic attack is something we've only seen a couple times. That's the same basic, wording as Cyclops, but what that is telling you is that it doesn't matter which basic attack chain you are using, it's counting the second one. If you go medium, cool, the medium 2 is the second basic attack. Medium light, the light 1 is, right? If you go light, you get it, right? The point is, this is just looking for that second one. So if you are attacking into an opponent and they block or auto block while you're doing this, and remember, even if they auto block and they try to stun you, Frank is stun immune while unstoppable. Very important because of this. That's going to allow you to land that second hit, and boom, now you have your crush up. When Frank's crush ends after being used to break a block, it goes on cooldown for 20 seconds, or until he gains one of his berserk passives. So this is very similar to Dracula's invisibility that we've already talked about this weekend. Basically, if you didn't need to use it when you use it, you're not punished for it. It doesn't go on cooldown. But if you did use it to do something you otherwise wouldn't have been able to, then it does go on cooldown. Frank just also has that extra buyout that if you gain enough combo and get his berserk, then that cooldown ends early. So, heavy attack, external combustion. On hit, Frank's heavy attack inflicts an incinerate debuff for 20 seconds that is then paused during his special attacks. This stacks up to 4. Note that max stacks because there are other incinerate debuffs later that have a different max stacks. So those are 2 different incinerates. Don't confuse them, just calling that out now. On hit or block, Frank's heavy attack also adds 4 hits to his combo meter. So you can build combo faster by throwing a lot of heavies, which can also put your crush out of cooldown more quickly, because combo is what gives you your berserks, right? That said, you're usually going to want to not just throw heavies with Frank. You want to throw more heavies than normal, but not exclusively heavies, because you also want to be building power. And with that, let's get into the special attacks. Now, I'm actually going to read these out of order, and we're going to start with the special 2, because that is the ramp special, and then we'll go back to the special 1, because that's the cash out. The first 4 hits of the special 2 each grant Frank a personal berserk passive, so there's a bunch of ramp really quickly, right? That's 2/3 of your total, and it means that often in a fight, you only need to gain 1 berserk before you get here, because you're going to get another one on the special 1 that we're going to get to in a second. The final hit of the special 2 refreshes all of Frank's incinerates, which is probably the 4 that you gained from the heavy, and then inflicts 8 more that last even longer. These are for 30 seconds and are also paused during his special attacks. Here's the max stacks of 8. So you can have 12 incinerates, 4 from the heavy, and then 8 slightly longer ones from the special 2. And then after the special 2, you're normally going to want to go back to the special 1 and throw it, it gives you another personal berserk passive. So, like I said, you get 5 from just going special 2, special 1, and there's a max stacks of 6. So, as long as you've, you know, gained 1 berserk passive from gaining 15 combo on the way here, which you probably did, you don't really have to worry about getting too many of them. And then on the final 3 hits, Frank deals a burst of energy damage, and its base potency is increased by 12.5% flat for each of the incinerates on the opponent. Now, that base potency part is important because this means that things that increase or decrease the potency of energy damage, damaging effects in general, and especially instant damaging effects apply to the whole thing, right? So, if you are fighting someone like, say, Sentinel, who reduces the potency of instant damaging effects, then the base potency of this burst of damage will be increased up to 150 times, right, if you have all 12 incinerates on the opponent. But then that 250% base potency will be cut in half to 125 of what it would do to somebody else who had no incinerates on them. Hopefully that makes sense. But the point is that you account for all the incinerates and then you look at external modifications. Now, the special 1 does not remove any incinerates, so you can very often try to get another one off before you lose the incinerates from the special 2, and you can get a lot of damage out that way. But at some point, you're probably going to want to go back up to the special 2 and refill, and that's basically Frank's loop. Now, if the fight has not quite gone your way, if you've taken more damage, then you might want to try out the special 3, because it brings Frank back to life in cinematic fashion, right? It gives him 15% of his missing health as adrenaline, which, as we've talked about, he's then better than most at converting back, and it passively stuns the opponent for 3 seconds, so you can get some hits in, maybe some heavies, build power safely up to a special 1, right? And that special 1 is going to be better because for the next 10 seconds, his lights and mediums inflict an incinerate specifically from the special 2. So this is one of the longer incinerates that has the higher stat count. So the special 3, you know, gives you back some adrenaline and also kind of functions as the special 2. It doesn't give you the berserk, so it is possible if you haven't been holding on to them that you might have to get a few more, but it gives you the incinerates. Next up, signature ability. When Frank activates a special attack, he gains an undying passive for 10 seconds, and then if this prevents him from being knocked out, he gains his personal rage debuff. So undying has now been reworked. It works on damaging effects and power stings. And if you are wondering, aren't power stings damaging effects? Technically, no, but I'm not going to get into that here, other than to just say that. So, what this means is that you still take the damage. It's just that if it would kill you, it doesn't. And if it would kill you, you get your rage for free, right? So this basically means that Frank once, or I guess once and then he heals and then once again. This basically means that once every so often, Frank can throw a special regardless of the power stings on him, or he can throw a special while he's running the recoil masteries and not have it kill him, right? He can just kind of tank one of those, trigger the Undying, get his rage, and start to build health back via willpower, right? Because that 20 seconds is good for, on a normal character, that would be about 10% of your health. On Frank, it's going to be a little lower, but then if you can maybe snag some adrenaline back into that too, you can build up some health to then blow it up with another special that triggers a power sting or recoil, right? And so it basically means that as long as you are not taking hit damage that would then knock you out, you can hold on in a way that other characters can't. It really does a good job of selling that undead side of things, right? Next bullet, Frank gains extra critical rating for each non-damaging debuff he's suffering from, up to 10. This is normally something that you're going to have to chase certain matchups for, but if you get the 1 rage, it means you crit more. That's nice. And then while the opponent is incinerated, Frank gains extra energy penetration, which is doubled against science champions. So this is really nice because whether your opponent has energy penetration in their base kit, they're getting it from a node or maybe a defensive stat cast or stat focus, Energy Pen allows you to just ignore it. And we have kind of, I'll be honest, faked this in the past, but between Frank and the new StatCast, we have better tech for this. And this is really just going to allow you to ignore a percentage of positive energy resistance. So it won't take energy resistance below 0 and thus amplify the damage, but it will allow you to ignore your opponent's energy resistance and prevent it from reducing your energy damage at least as much. And this is very helpful for Frank because his incinerates do energy damage, his bursts of damage on the special 1 do energy damage, and all of those effects will ignore a certain amount of the opponent's positive energy resistance. I'm suddenly worried that I said physical somewhere in there, but I'm not going back. I think you get the point. So with that, let's take a quick look at his champion summary to just kind of go over everything at once. You gain Berserk passives either by building combo or with his specials 1 or 2. He doesn't idle after dodging back and starts to run immediately. When he does so, he becomes unstoppable until he stops. While unstoppable, his second basic attack can crush through the opponent's block or auto block, which is easier because he's stun immune. And he uses heavy attacks and specials 2 and 3 to inflict incinerates, and then special 1s to cash out on those incinerates and deal a bunch of damage. As a defender, you have to remember that he's immune to Poison, Petrify, and Spectre. He has willpower even in a quest where he otherwise wouldn't. And then you have to watch for the Unstoppable and the Undying, right? Because the Undying can save him after his special attacks if you're hoping to knock him out with damaging effects. But then you can get him down to 0 and just, tip him over by tapping him. So, like we said earlier, not a major defender. Now, synergies. First up, we have Blood Gem Corruption with Elsa Bloodstone. Pretty big lore tie-in. For Elsa, during her heavy or specials, while she's not reloading Hellfire rounds, she can double tap block and swap those effects between Incinerates and Cold Snaps. So this is really nice because it means that you can get the Cold Snaps without the opponent having to evade, which is sometimes just a death sentence for Elsa in certain matchups. This means you can just have it. But also, if you do it accidentally, or if something about the fight changes and you want to go back to Incinerates, you can. It's not just a swap effect. She can truly change her ammo. And then for Frank's side of it, while he's not unstoppable, he gains extra critical damage rating for each of his Berserk passives. So they do something for you outside of just being unstoppable. And this combos really well with his Sig if you happen to have debuffs on you. Stapled together mess with Venom Pool. Venom Pool's illogical DNA abilities now work against all non-mystic and non-superior champions. So for those of you who don't know Venom Pool, illogical DNA is the part of his kit that makes him immune to power drain, shock, various things, and then ramps him when he's immune to them. By default, it only works on tech champions because he's cosmic, but this is expanding it and says as long as you're not going against the class wheel and fighting mystics or superior, you're good, you still get those abilities. So that's a pretty big upgrade for Venom Pool. And then for Frank, gaining his Rage debuff also gives you 2 hits to his combo meter. So small little benefit, but it means that it's no longer exempted. With Morbius and Werewolf by Night, all Legions of Monsters champions on the team get an indefinite 20% Fervor passive. So as a reminder, Fervor is the effect that increases the ability accuracy of damaging effects. This is not the biggest deal in the world for most of the Legions of Monsters. Like, Werewolf already has increased ability accuracy on his, so this maybe makes him a more realistic option for fighting through glancing. It gives Frank a tiny chance of doing the same. You can get around, like, little ability accuracy reductions. But this is very good for Morbius because it increases the chance of him applying his bleeds and ramping even when he otherwise wouldn't be guaranteed, right? Even when he doesn't have his own fervor. And then pull the lever. Sorry, this is a typo. This synergy is actually with Moleman. Moleman and Frank get increased shock and incinerate debuff duration, which is nice because both of them just benefit from having those effects on the opponent. Castles and Gallows with Punisher, Punisher 2099, and Cosmic Ghost Rider, your various Frank-Castles and friends. Everybody on the team, not just these, gains extra health. And then Mongrels, which is a variant of the enemies, with Wolverine, Wolverine X-23, Old Man Logan, and Weapon X, because, you know, a Wolverine killed Frank and set off this whole thing. Everybody on the team gets extra critical rating. And that's Frank. Like I said up top, he's very unique. You could definitely say weird, but he's kind of pulling gameplay from other games. It's not gameplay that hasn't worked, it's just gameplay that's never really been made to work in MCOC, and I think the result is pretty cool. I would highly encourage you to try him out, because even if you normally don't like difficult to play characters, there's a decent chance that this one might not actually be that difficult. It just might be new, and maybe it'll click for you, right? And then regardless, he has some really nice utility, very solid damage, and he looks cool. He's a shambling monster, right? So let me know in the comments what you're thinking about Frank, and until next time, thank you so much for watching, and take care.